All right. Congratulations for making it to our session, that's for certain. So we'll find the kind of the essential pattern of our arched spine to start. So I want you to sit forward well, actually nestled right up to your bolster. So you'll feel that your seat is lightly touching. And then if you can orient the blocks so that they're in a higher spot of the legs, maybe that's how you usually have them. But when you feel the thighs lifted, the thigh skin, right, kind of presses into the block. That's why we usually turn the blocks and contour them. So I want you to feel like you're using your stomach a little bit. Your hip flexors are slightly activated when you sit like this, as if you're prepping to go to boat pose, that kind of position. So I want you to feel that it's an anticipated moment, right? When you're anticipating something. So we have the legs slightly elevated and touching onto the blocks. And then we add our belt. And what we'll start with today is, I won't make it an anticipated pose where you're struggling to hold it, but I want you to feel that the belt is wide, and then you hook it around your feet as you have before in Supta Baddha Konasana, and then you slide it so that it is maybe as low as you can place it with the buckle nearby for a quick release, as it's called, a quick release. And as you start to lower your waist back, can you feel the gradual motion of that position where you're proceeding, completely descending your spine, especially the upper back and the shoulders. So turn the blocks so they're contoured, so they really hold that higher part of the thigh. If it's too easy for you to have your legs supported like this and you want more sensation coming into your nervous system, well, you can make the legs a little lower, okay? But rather than holding my head up, I'm gonna place my head on my blanket and make that decision if this is enough height or if I wanna add that towel at the very upper part of my back. So you can make that decision. I have a feeling we'll be fine with this height for this position. And then as you grasp onto your sand, whether it's on your feet, if you got it there earlier, or you have one on each inner thigh, or you have the sand so it layers lifted across the ribs right below the sternum, so that you can feel that intensity of the sternum, that strength and that space, very solid and full. And the arms are going to be in a casual, almost the most comfortable place you can have your elbows in your hands. So you notice that the elbows and the hands, the direction of the hands out from the elbows changes the circulation in your shoulders, right? So we've done exercises in the past where we have our elbows by our sides and we kind of move our thumbs open, right? Strengthening work for rotators. So I want you to let the position be almost equal to how your knees are right now, right? Your knees are spinning and motioning open. I hope they're not spinning, but they're motioning out. And the knees are not quite like thumbs, right? But since you have thumbs, feel the thumbs motioning open and then relax your fingers. Giving yourself the few moments of entry time into this session today, your session, purely breathing and inviting focus alongside breath and awareness, with all of us coming together for practice. So there is an experience of feeling the support. So see if you can bring that in, especially if you're imagining that from others. And then keep that communication of breathing, very full upper chest. And let the sandbag actually have an experience of being moved by your breath. And this is the most important part, is that if you have the choice of a sandbag or something with 5 to 10 pounds of weight, you're moving the circulation through the upper ribs. And if you don't use a sandbag, that's fine, but maintain that path of emphasis with your centerpiece of the chest, the lungs, and then, of course, the diaphragmatic breathing, feeling that connectivity at the base of the heart, and it threads into, or it basically kind of spills down into the feeling of the belly, belly soft. Resting the face, the jaw. Now, at some point, the thumbs start to kind of curl in, the fingers relax, and I think these are the places that we might want to bring some focus towards, is the smaller parts of the puzzle, right? How the nervous system reacts at the edges, the hands, our legs, and probably the top of us in the brain. So if you can possibly move your shoulders back without trying to pull them up to your ears, feeling the shoulders move back into the bolster. And then depending on the spatial ability besides you, you're going to start to move your elbows open and then feel the hands reaching either straight out to the sides above the floor, and then making that halo of awareness around, but it's really going to create the strength in your arms, and then that descends into the circulation in your lungs. So reaching the hands together behind you, interlace your fingers at the roots. Okay, good. And then feel the hands when they press back, turning the hands inside out. Feel the wrists. And that complete awareness through the shoulders. Maybe they are equally, or they feel some equilibrium, and perhaps you don't notice much difference, and you might notice quite a bit. But where there's balance in the body, see if you can level your attention there with your breath. Even if breath feels like it's mostly in face or in belly. Now, if you're one that likes to change the crossing or the interlacing of your fingers, take that now. I like to try to make sure I monitor how I interlace my fingers on this position. You can also kind of clean up this pattern by holding your elbows instead of your fingers together, and feel that thick rib position, right? It's that thickness in the ribs that are, it's the whole centerpiece of the body has a kind of a sturdy thickness, but it also can be moved by your breath. And there's so many ribs that it's kind of mysterious that you think of it as one big thick block sometimes when you're laying back. So we're going to work with kind of spreading that out. So let go of the grasp of your arms together, and then we'll come out with the position of unbuckling that belt, and you're going to want to get the belt. So slide it off at the feet. And then as you move the knees to point up, how about this? We're going to move our blocks slightly to the side. And then as you push down into your heels, lift up your hips. Let's take off the sand so it's a little easier for our mobility. And then I'm going to move the blanket off of my top of the bolster so it's a little easier on my neck. And then as you lift up the hips, you're going to place the block under the back of the pelvis, but I want you to place a height which is low or mid setting, so that when that block is under the back of the pelvis, right, so it's above the buttocks, you might feel the best support with the block is kind of right at the top of the buttocks, not high on the spine. So let's try this. If you have the block there at lower medium setting, before you get so decisive what you're going to do with the height, see if you can bring a knee to the chest. Doesn't mean like all the way to the heart space, but as you can lift up a leg, bending the leg in. And then feel when you do that a couple times, does it feel like the spine has a little bit of flexion? There's a little stretch in the spine, but you're capable not necessarily of balancing on your tailbone right now, but you can actually operate on alternating the knee moving in. So I want you to practice this for that core, that diaphragmatic band. So I'd like to think of this band at the lower waistline. And then I want you to let your hands find palms down and then alternate for about 15 seconds. So it's not necessarily a specific timing game that we're working with, but it's a kind of reality check. This is going to be a class where there'll be quite a bit of kind of check-ins with the circulation, the nervous system, and each of the shapes. So as we place the psoas in this position, you got to take your belt if it's not stuck under your block. I get myself in all kinds of snags with my props sometimes. I need some proper instruction. So place your belt so you have it on across the ribs and then slide the legs down. Try to let them stretch forward away from your midline. If the block seems too high, then take it one notch down. And then as you place the sand across the upper thighs, you're going to feel, actually, I'm going to place it across the upper hips. That feels a little bit safer on my back muscles. So the feet are going to step apart. And then get a feeling when your feet step apart and your heels move apart, that the feet actually have a relaxed place of almost softening. So they're not necessarily turning out, but they might be. So one thing you can do to help yourself with that is feel the heels press down. And I'm sure the back of your knees feel a little different side to side. Take a belt overhead. And then as you're grasping onto that belt, use that security of the belt to facilitate the support in the front lines of the body, the front spaces. I find the belt enormously helpful, surprisingly, for the bridging, and this is a bridge pose, kind of bridging the gaps here between the upper and lower experience. And notice what has the most frequency in your bones, whether it's upper body or below the hips. You can always step back with your feet, bend your knees any second you want, and see if you can kind of reclaim that stability in your back. This one will take a little bit of kind of working through it so that I can get my arms back and my shoulder blades pressing back. So give it another 15 seconds or so, feeling that your body's being supported, but also there's an energetic intensity on this position. Now the hands are going to slide open and then drain the hands, slide them off of the belt. And then as the feet walk in, at this point, we all have the knees starting to go to bending. I want you to feel where the hips have that sand support. And then as you push down into your feet, take just a mini moment of your feet have 100% of the awareness into the feet on filling all the corners of the bottom of the foot. Okay? Feel when you are almost lifting up your hips. So sandbags are great for getting some balance across the thigh bands, right? Especially in this shape. Arms are spreading open, palms open. And then as I start to lift up my hips, I can still feel the block under my tailbone space. I'm going to slide the sand off, but try to stay with the moment here. Slide the block out. Get your ball. If you don't have a ball, you're going to use that towel or a block on the left side, right besides the left hip. So go ahead and place the ball on the floor besides the mat. And then as you start to lower your spine, We're going to release the tailbone as if you're trying to move it back into the bolster. And then as your feet get closer to your sitting bones, lift the right foot, cross it to the left knee, and then you might catch yourself doing one of these things. I mean, my sacrum is not completely touching my bolster. So if it's not really that close, you might scoot yourself back there. And if you miss your blanket that you had under your head, you can bring it back too. This feels a little better. So I want you to feel when you lift up the right foot that your back is touching to support, not that you're kicking up and you're kind of flinching and gripping in the hip flexor so much. So if that's really happening at the lower belly to the top of the thigh, a lot of grip, you might put your hands to the lower belly right at the top of the hip rim. And then when you pick up your right foot, really see if you can cater to balancing your sitting bones for the moment when the foot is just off the floor. And then as you cross the right ankle to that left knee, have a little bit of free play here. So I'm going to lean my left leg into the ball and hold the right knee. Or I'm going to give myself space on that left side of my mat, and I'm going to let my leg cross a little bit over and lean to the ball. Okay, so I'm going to choose ankle to knee and hold the right knee and move it towards me. Okay, some like to have the leg crossing. I've seen this many a time. And you might find that there's something in your core that feels good about that oblique kind of motion in the waistband. So feel what works if you're holding your knee, regardless of the leg crossing. Send the right arm straight back besides your head and align your emphasis to start to feed into your hips. Okay, first shapes were very symmetrical. And now we're starting to kind of go into, in some sense, kind of a little breakout session. We're going to go into the hips and then focus on one chamber of the body. So pull and feel the right amount of motion with your left hand with a pulling pattern. Okay? Good. Resting the eyes and maybe 2% of the brain. See where that gets you. It could only be useful to integrate the concentration on breath. Savor this time. Now, if that right arm is in a motion back, feel when you bring the right arm down and the knees back center, you're going to take the ball. I think most of us have one of these in this group, for sure. You're going to lift up your rear and actually your whole pelvis. So you're going to lift everything up and you're going to sit on it with the right buttock. And then massage by using pressure and movement. Uncross the right foot off of the left leg. And you can clearly rely on the support of your bolster to kind of lie into on your upper body. And then let your arms set themselves close to you or a little bit spread out so you can find balance. And feel if there's any particular muscle on the right buttock, right? Maybe it's not the glute medius, maybe it's not center of the buttock and up. Maybe it's closer to the outer side feeding into the hip that you want to kind of press into, and then give it a full few moments of just simply settling your weight into that trigger point. You probably will find some spot on the right rear that fascia can get some circulation and loosening of those threads, right? So hydrating the tissues. Now, as I change the crossing, I'm going to slide my right leg down because it feels kind of nice with the ball on the right leg massaging into that hip. And then I'm going to slide the leg back up. Then push into your feet and then see if you can kind of push out the ball like you're really wagging your tail right to the right. And then I have to pull it out so it's not on under my rear. Lift up the left leg. Now, last time we kind of spent a little more energy on, okay, what's happening with your hip flexor? Well, use the low belly zone, like you're pressing to the floor or the bolster, whatever's under you. Cross it to the right leg. Let the left knee open for a moment. And then lean your weight. Sitting on the ball for this most likely won't be super useful, but you can play with stuff, if you feel like, well, we were on the ball, I liked the ball, I'm going to sit on it again. Well, you might find that it's not the biggest contribution to the release of the hip on this shape. But get a feel of holding your left knee with the right hand and reaching the left arm. Feel if your ribs spread open on the left with the elbow kind of flashing to the side. And then that gradual motion of reaching it back. Yeah, and the key here would be gradual motion versus trying to reach it back and stay, which is sort of a nervous system, stimulant. So feel if you can react in your practice to be kind of slow and observant. This is the benefit of at home, right? You can, take your time in your shape, or if you get scattered, you move along at your own pace. Take a nap when it feels convenient in the shape or not. So for me, the left arm stretching back has a little bit of stimulation in my shoulder, so I might put the arm down. Keep in mind you're still receiving that beneficial flow through the hip, right, and the low back muscles. They're all kind of working in tandem there. And then as you start to negotiate how you're going to move onto the ball, you might find the left arm lowers down, and then I shift my knees back center, take the ball out, and then uncross. I'm going to uncross right away on this side and just see if it changes how the ball is received under my left rear. And, you can roll. Of course, you can roll to the side and massage into the side of the buttock. You could stay on your back and let your hips kind of push a little bit side to side. Kind of move your rear like you're wagging your tail, but try to keep the ball on the left buttock. Right? Really try to keep it centered in a spatial experience on the rear that feels like, oh, that's an area that likes to have that deep touch with the connection of the ball kind of pressing into the rear. These are good props to have. And you can actually adjust the movement and the pressure. So give it one final hold. Okay, and this is going to be where we transition to our side work. So I want you to actually roll a little to the left, take the ball out, of course. And I haven't really sampled using the ball for this respiratory on the hip, because we're really going to focus on the rib space. So I want you to take your bolster so that it is across, but we're going to add the blanket right on top. It seems like, not very much height, but you might find if you have your towel or blanket, it's a small blanket that you might find, that you'll place it on top of the bolster. And then on the other side, we'll have a blanket stack. So it's in that quarter fold. I think we're following this pattern pretty well. Your hip that you were just massaging is the base hip now. And so when I curl my body over, we're going to start today with the knees together. Okay, so we're focusing on upper lobes of the lungs. So where you want to be kind of in the center of when you cross over the threshold of the bolster, it's on the mid-thoracic, but we've all got this one down as far as where that pattern goes. The difference is that I'm going to stack my blanket up a little higher under my head. Seems a little bit more relaxing. And then I'm going to put a ball or a block. You can do either. The block might be kind of nice because it's just spatially a little bit, larger than the ball. But I imagine you might have something that you can explore here. But the key with this is, oops, get your sand. Okay, sand is going to be pretty high up for this one. So I want you to try the sand application where it's across, not lengthwise on the side. And so you might really have to get your blanket higher up. All the props we need for this is going to be taking me some energy to learn. Okay, so remember I mentioned the chair here. So if you do have a chair and you want to put that here, you could have a little more height with the arm. Does that make sense? So if your shoulder is pretty sensitive, the chair can be really nice. It's a lot of clutter to have around in your practice too. So if I'm here, my knees are together, and that's going to put a little more into my ribs, okay? A little bit more into my upper lobes of my lungs. Now, of course, my hands could be down and comfortable. I don't have to. And I want you to focus. I can't see everyone's alignment on this pose, but what I'm learning by watching trainings is that the tendency to keep your rib line in line with your pelvis is rare. Most of us kind of tilt back. We don't have this like right in line. So it's generally that you're going to probably try to have to push your hips a little bit back so that you can feel this is lined up, okay? Versus what we've done with our leg pushing back. We will do that, but stay with this for a good minute here. So feel where your left and right hand or your right hand is comfortable, whether that's a little overhead or not at all, you choose. And find it so that it's not getting an ultra strain. So if it's a little strainful, go back to a cozy position. If the sand has kind of descended into that curve in the waist, try to get it back up. It's a bit of a challenge on this one for the breathing. And of course, if it stays in the curve, it's okay. So we're going to stay for a little tiny bit of time, but the knees positionally are important. And I think you might start to feel where you get the hips to push a little bit back, and then that stretch into the ribs. It's really subtle with the ribs though. Okay, so the knees are connected so that the lower back is completely supported. Okay, now we're going to change from this side line into side sage at your own pace. I trust that you'll find that pace. So you might put your hand on your sand, your arm kind of holding onto your sand sack. And then as you lift up and slide the right leg back, this is where you might kind of get back up and put a ball on the inside of the knee. I know it's going to take some energy to do that directionally, but you might even be able to kind of push the ball or the block down under your inner right leg. And then for certain, I want you to try to work with that sand a little lower in actually the curve of the waist or to the hip, and stretch the right arm open towards the ceiling. So my head is leaning a little bit back. Now, careful continual motion. So we're going to bring the right arm so it goes over the side of your head, maybe over to the block, and then let your head turn so it's resting into the blankets. You're resting your head. Doesn't mean that you have to turn so your forehead is down, no, but you're on the side. Relax your left hand. Make sure that you're feeling that the support is continuing in the ribs and the breathing muscles. Resting the eyes. Give it a few moments. And experiment with the breath layers of attention and intention with your breath in the ribs and the belly. And I would encourage you to try to start with the belly breath first, and then let that lift up into the rib cage for this segment. So we may have started with kind of sampling movement and just exploring breath, but starting to place the attention so you fill up your belly balloon, and then it moves up to the intercostals, and then you let the breath go. Good. So with this moment here, see if you can polish this pose up, which might mean you slide the right arm down and feel where it's truly the most calm. Maybe it's besides the waist, it's on your body, the right arm. It doesn't have to be on the blankets or the bolster. It could be on you. Okay, so we feel that left side touching into the prop, so it's actually being held, which is kind of interesting. I feel a little sensation on the right side with lengthening, but the left side is truly being kind of held into shape. So we're going to cruise through the organs, organ cruising, when we come up in a moment. So feel where the right leg is moving in towards the left leg. I know you might have a ball that kind of falls away or a block that's still kind of near your rear, but it's easy to move them. But we have the knees together in that sideline position. We're going to influence the ribs with a little motion of turning just to get up. So I want you to put your hands turning towards the floor, hands down. And then as you come up, you're going to take the sand for a moment over to the left side of your mat when you look forward. And then find out where your props are. And you might take your towel away because it added a little bulk to your ribs. It's small today, so when we build up that in time, you will adjust. Okay, but only this group. Okay, so sit on your bolster. We're going to be having, just keep an awareness today, the direction on the mat's going to change 2 times. So if you have your screen in a certain way, it might be interesting, but we'll go with the show here. We'll go on with the show. So right leg goes open. And you can have a block or a ball under the left knee. Put something actually not under the knee per se, but on the side flesh of the leg. And you know, the spatial connection when you bend your leg, you might place the ball just about there so it's supportive, especially when you get your sand on the top of that thigh. Then it kind of lets it in motion down a little bit. Yeah. So the ball could work, the block might be better for some. It's not required to use a ball at all on this one. Don't have to use the ball at all. Okay, so we got a belt and we have a pattern where the side that we were just moving down into, we're going to rotate that side. So take a belt, buckle up, and make the loop on it pretty small. So you'll have a long belt this way to feature the pose. There you go. Yeah, I know, Flo, I was about ready to do that one, but we'll see where it goes. First things first. So take a belt under your right foot, place it around to the back of that right hip and hold the belt with the left hand. Now, I would be a little casual about this. So instead of getting so kind of anticipatory where you're going, feel kind of how your body might need to be supported. I mean, it needs some help. So when the leg is out on the right side, I'm using this position of my leg to help stretch my arm, and my ribs. So it's true that you want to push out with the foot so that when you stretch the left arm back, right, I have some connectivity in my shoulder and my ribs. But for some people, they want to keep their arm bending and closer in, kind of to work on this lower chunk of the rib cage, or it goes higher up when the arm is straight. So I would be cautious here when you hold onto your left knee with the right hand, that you orient yourself to these mid-sectional position of breath and potential to twist. Keep it pretty casual. Don't get too rotational with your maximum. Feel where it is reasonable for your left shoulder, and then pause. Maybe get a nice firm grasp on your knee. If it's coming up off of the ball, that's interesting, right? You want to feel where your waist is able to be strong enough to keep that knee moving downwards. And then it's a matter of rotation, but also multiple rotations in the body. So I have my left foot kind of out in the middle of my mat. Some are going to pull their foot in towards the bolster, and then it's a little easier, I think. So I think it's a little easier. It's possible here when you're relaxing your grip on your belt now, let go. And then hold onto your belt with your right hand, change the hand hold, and lean down, and left arm relaxes behind your back, or you touch onto your waist with your left hand, maybe massaging a little bit that lower space of the left side of the waist. Not necessarily too interactive, but directionally assessing that motion, especially since you're tipping to the right side, and this left side gets this leverage benefit of lifting and lengthening. Turn your head to the right leg, looking to the right leg. Left arm could be behind you, resting on your body. You can also try to seek your belt with your left hand and just grab a hold of it and feel that connection, kind of like you're moving on the rope to get a little farther down to that right leg. You're in the descent. Right? You're trying to drop down to the base of your pose. Give it a few moments and encourage the connectivity of the brain, whether it's turning to the right leg or it's turning slowly to the sky, closing your eyes and feeling that inner spaciousness in the side, the left side. I know it's only one side so far that we're moving through. And as you slide, let go of the belt with the left hand, slide the right hand to bring you up, and then keep that connection. I know this might be one where you just kind of let go and you sit up, but feel the threading, right? There's complete awareness in the mid-body. And then when we bring that right leg forward, take the belt off the foot, slide the belt away from your mat there, and then you're going to take both of your blocks and they'll place either besides your right foot in front and lean forward. And we got the sand situation to change up. So I'm encouraging you to, if you feel really centered, want to keep it there, keep it there. If you're going to change the layer, you'll move the sand to the right thigh, over the thigh, so it's a nice wrap on the leg, as high as it will go. And then lean forward and notice if the ball is best under your left knee or your right knee, right? You might even wad up your towel under your right knee, but you'll feel the thighs kind of motion open. It's interesting, our Baddha Konasana beginning, right? Our legs have that equilibrium for most of us after practicing so long, but these positions can be not so symmetrical. So Feel and be careful, right? How far your knee is moved out with the right leg. You might bring it in a little bit, the foot. Walk your blocks to the top left corner. Okay, stay with this because this is going to be a pigeon shift here. So we have this left corner focus. Stay on this side of the map. Okay, left side. Left leg, arms reaching. Okay. So now where that right hip is awake at this point, see if you can bridge that connectivity from that right hip. And I think of it right now as kind of, I know the hip is not a wing, right? But, you know, they can kind of feel like that if you're in these two different patterns. So start to move your sand away. And then, I know you got blankets behind you. I want you to tuck in one blanket, toss off the top one. Stay with this pattern if you need to come back to it. And then you're going to move your right leg back and take the blocks right in front. So the left foot is actually trying to move up on the mat for this pose. The ball is not essential to have, but you might not like it at all. I'm going to keep it because the study that with the knee that's kind of interesting lately in these technique sessions is that I'm not trying to get my hips level at all in this pose right now when I come into it this way. So you might work with taking the ball out, feeling the foot hook closer to your bolster. And the direction is certainly a forward bend with this one. So not a back bend, but if my hips aren't perfectly, you know, level, which is not going to happen with this pattern, then my body goes into a forward bend to stretch into my left hip, but also to release my back, forward, head down. And try to keep it in the forward bend category. So if this left foot is close to my bolster, I'm going to see if I can scoot the foot a little bit up. But if that's too much in my rear on the left side, then I let it stay. And I don't want to snap anything around in the bones. I want to keep them getting a good blood supply. So if things feel a little bit kind of stiff or brittle in a spot, then back off. It's not good alignment if it feels uncomfortable. And center here for a few. Feel your weight transfer a little forward into your thighs. Good. And let the mind move the reality of aligning from your lower body to your upper. Okay, so the challenge I find here is to either decide on the forward bend or lifting up higher. So we're going to keep it rather matched with a up dog pattern right now. So we'll take the blocks away. This is moving a little fast for you. You can always go a little slower or kind of observe and then join when you're ready to. So if you want a longer pigeon, you can stay, of course. But as we come back eventually to hands and knees, I know my knees are not underneath my hips, but we are on hands and knees in this position right here. So I'm going to hook toes under right foot, and then as I stretch the left knee and foot back, it's all that I'm doing is stretching back the leg. So alternate bending your knees, okay? Feel the reach through the roots of the toes, stretching the hips up and back, the heels downwards, and they go 1 foot at a time with that layer of reach through the calf. Okay, now the hands, though, probably feel equal pressure, not necessarily like one hand gets more than the other. So I want you to notice that when you move yourself down to your knees here, move into a variation of up dog. So you let your thighs rest into the bolster. And moving a bolster under our hips for an up dog changes the angle on our pelvis and our spine when we have a bolster. So you can use the bolster this way, right? We've done it a few different ways in the group, or the bolster lengthwise, which we'll do in a moment. So feel this way. Notice your lower back bend. It's a low back bend. Okay, and then when you bring the body back to table, see if you can move the hip chamber back, space the knees wide enough so you feel like you've got a pretty good base. You're pretty stable here. And if the wrists are bothering you, turn the fingers out. If that doesn't seem to facilitate release and ease, you might find that coming down to your elbows for cat-cow works better some days. So you're going to hollow the belly, chin to chest, round your back, cat shape. And then we'll inhale. And when we arch the spine, consider moving the eyes forward and stretch the eyes out. Not necessarily your chin up, but you're stretching to your eyes. And then come back all the way into cat again. So alternate threading the spine and the arch of the back. And exhalation, hollow the belly, chin to chest. Inhale last time, reaching. Okay, now when you come back, toes under to downward facing dog, what we'll do is we'll pivot our bolster lengthwise, and we're emphasizing getting our head onto the bolster today, so we can actually have a root from our head, the head to the sitting bones. So when I lift up my hips, I can put a block. You can also tilt up your bolster with a block as well. Sometimes this works for some to get the head to touch, okay? And some don't want to have that. It doesn't work for them in general at all. So you get to decide if you're gonna have your head touched to your bolster. But I want you to feel whatever is under your bolster on it to help you, and see if you can reach your sitting bones back and feel the arms stretching apart and your head touching to the bolster. Yeah, I know it might take some props to get underneath your head so that you can feel that root, not just of your feet, but also of the top of your head. Yeah, I don't want you to turtle your head down and in. So do what you can. I know it's going to take a few moments to get back to the next shape we're working with, but spend the moment here. Hands pushing the floor away. Good. Okay, now walk your hands back to your feet, or your feet towards your hands, and let the toes lift up a little on the blanket you have there. So toes are up, heels are down. Stretching your calves. And then if you can, possibly choose one of these three. Okay, you can either bring your hands to your bolster. I know you might have a towel on that or some stuff. Lift up the bolster so that there's a full pattern of length in the back line of the body, through the ribs into the shoulders. Okay, you can also choose to have your hands relaxed down or on the bolster on the floor. You might do each of these actually. And then finally, you would let the head completely be persuaded to rest down from the upper spine. Yeah, and let that be kind of a trail for you to completely lengthen your back. Breathe deep. But there's no holding of the elbows on this version because of the calf stretch, right? So we have to continuously monitor what's going on in the legs. Okay, now step off of the blanket, push it a little forward so your feet are flat on your mat, on your flooring, and then hold your elbows in Uttanasana, held elbows shape. Let your shoulders feel like they can almost shrug down off of the back. The big heap on the top of the back, let it go. And let the brain completely relax. Let all your thoughts spill out. Big pile of them there. Now with my feet fairly close, okay, you're gonna take the hands to the legs and then scoot your feet apart. This is kind of fun to do sometimes. Hold your ankles or your lower legs and then move your feet toe heel to the edge of your mat. And then bend your elbows open as you move the crown of your head down for a few seconds. Trying to let your elbows move open like you're airing out your armpits. So they're kind of open and forwards. Yeah. Yeah, I know your clothing might need some adjusting, but we'll get there again. No worries. Now, as you bend through the knees, lower down your hands, okay? And then start to walk on forward. You have a wide leg stance, so you're going to scoot your feet in, and you're going to actually lower down to that up dog. If the bolster's got a block under it, you'll have to move that aside. And then you're going into the up dog with a narrow bolster. So lift up through the whole waist into the core, chest. Okay, now ease down with the elbows. So you're going to come into a little more of a grasshopper pose, right? So the elbows are by the sides. You're really using your limbs as folding, right? They have kind of a folding layer at the elbows. And then when you start to move your ribs forward, take a baby back bend. So you're going to bring your hands back besides you into locust pose and feel the tops of your feet delicately touching down, and see if you can really work with that strength and continuum from your lower back waist to the lower lungs. Breathe, strengthen the lungs. If you get a little tapped out with your lungs on this one, bring your hands to the floor and then take a moment and then come back with your hands. So sometimes you have to get your hands back down and catch your wind again, but try to work with that ribs forward, upper lobes of the lungs. Okay, so part of the lung work today is, now let's put our hands down, is the, and come on up and then sit to that blanket. Is this focus on keeping the diaphragm open and the directional pattern with it. So we're going to turn our bolster now. I know that your angle with your screen might be a little funky because now I'm turning because I want to face everybody towards this side. So with this blanket or towel on top of your bolster on this right hip down, okay, second side, I'm going to put the blanket so it's not going to be on this, or the towel on the side of the bolster that's touching to my leg. And I'm not super happy about the knee pushed down to the floor. So keep it, this is what it's classically taught as these really basic upper lung positions. But analytically, right, with the lungs, using the sand and working on that strength is what we're focusing on. So we got a ball or a block between. And if it doesn't seem to be kind of winded for you in your lungs right now, it's not that you're like a super good free diver or something, but you might have some pretty good breathing capacity. So, but we still want to work with strengthening that. So when I put my sand up high, remember we do 2 side poses today. So as you lower down, make a position of support for you with your arm overhead. I think I'm going to try that chair one next time to put my hand on a chair seat. Yeah, maybe that is a good arm position. So I've got my knees with something between, so it could be block or ball. Yeah, the ball should probably be right at the knee in line in the center, not on the thigh. Okay, so play with that, get a feel, and these are all recommendations, and they're the most elementary basic right? So if you're going to do some little experimentation, that's up to you. But here's the focus with your hips. Yeah, we've done this too many times in one position only, so we might not have this line from our ribs straight down to our hip. And you can look up and see, is your rear pushing back or is it tucking under? You want to have it so it's just flush. Shoulder down to hip. I'll have to look at the recording and see if I'm in line later on. But get the sense that it's like you feel you're off balance when you do it correctly, it seems. So it's like your stomach muscles are working a tiny bit here. The ball is helpful for that. So I don't want to push my feet and tuck them in, right? I want that to be flush as well from my knee down to my ankle. And of course, that's not always perfect with your foot stacking. So you do the best that you can. Your feet can kind of hug each other. Foot hug. So left arm is either over or it's resting down towards the right. And find where your head actually turns a little bit to relax the neck. So feel all these angles the neck can be in this position. Let the weight of your pelvis be heavy. Feel everything that's touching the props, which is kind of everything of you. And let yourself surrender into the props and feeling that support of what's below you. And then the support that's within you via the breath. And you might only have that as a particular focus to kind of grapple with is, oh yes, I have my breath. I'll come back to that trusted source. And maybe the heart rate is able to get a little more calm. Maybe it's up. So as we change into side sage, this is where you might have that advantage of graduating to a little deeper stretch. But keep it calm. So if you want to move your ball a little bit back, you can kind of feel it roll on the inside of that left leg. And then as I stretch the left arm over, I feel my left leg kind of change. That's what's changed, is the left leg. The right knee might tuck up a little further into that bolster, but your blanket or towel is still on top of your bolster. Yeah, so the advancement on this particular pattern is to get higher up with the height under your rib cage. But the mid-thoracic is the important part that's lifting, right? So it's right at the nipple line. That's what you're trying to keep lifting. And if you feel the breath when you lift up your arm to the ceiling and move it over, or just lift it up, you can feel the inhale is not necessarily very long, right? To get a 4 to 5 count inhale is challenging. Through the nose, right? Through the mouth, it might be easier, but we're trying to breathe through our nose and out through our mouth. That's a good idea. Less stressful on the nervous system. So give it a little bit of time. You can move your sandbag down. If you got kind of happy with your sand where it's at, you could keep it there. It's a little breath challenge, though, to keep it for 3 to 4 minutes. This is a recommended shape to be in for 7 minutes for respiratory strengthening. This is a whole little science session, but we're not going to be here 7 minutes. So that's maybe a relief, but keep in mind you can add this simply. You could do a relaxed Baddha Konasana and then each of these sides, and then legs up the wall and have a nice 25-minute practice. But we're past 25-minute practice so far. So encouraging where the arm is up, or maybe it's behind you. This side could feel different for your shoulder. Okay, but feel if your head is still in the same position, you might turn. So your back of your head is on your blanket for a moment and feel what that's like. It's nice to kind of break off from the kind of habitual patterns and poses that don't allow us to get a lot of free range, right? Especially where our neck might be. So give it some continual motion because it can when it's supported. Stretching your neck is nice when it's supported, I think, versus kind of free dropping. Okay, so what we're going to move back towards is that seated pattern. We have a few more seated poses, then we're going to get to brain flow today. So I want you to lean into it. We're going to do a little more study with that. Lean into the left leg now, moving the ball aside. Take the sand over to your knees, so it's kind of on that side. That's where we're going with the sand. And then I'm going to encourage you to put your hands both back to help you feel a little bit of that twist in the lower guts. All right, so it kind of wraps around my back. Okay, toss your towel. Take a careful seat up, use your arms. And then when you're here, we'll place the right knee open, the ball, the sand. Oh, yeah, it's kind of fun. I got to turn the other direction today. It worked out. So now your left foot's going to touch to something that's not limiting it too much. So make sure you've got some reality check with your footing that you have if you need to move your props around. Getting the belt lashed to the foot, and then, this is a fairly specific sequencing. Now, when I stretch my right arm back with the belt being held by the hand, and I bring the left hand to that right leg, I notice I do tend to pick up the leg. So my work is in trusting my seat, trusting the waist, really trusting the process of the pose. It's really going to always come back to that. So however it ends up. Now my knee is going to get a little bit of help. So I'm going to get that ball under. Now if the ball's too low, then get a block because they're higher for your legs. So if you keep holding your knee up, then get something it can center onto. Blocks are good, towels, blankets. So when you're turning to your right, this is a fairly deep twist. And it's kind of fun because it's very supported. If your shoulder is not liking this belt situation, you can put your hand on your blankets, and that might be just what you need, something a little less. It's okay. Now find this specific place right now. You're going to lean to your left leg and reach for the belt, let go of the belt with the right hand. Or you can pull with that left hand to lean to that thigh, and then try to keep that right thigh still turned open. Okay, this is important. So you feel that right thigh still turned open. Okay, now right arm can go open and up and over the side of the face, or it can stay behind you and turn your eyes, your head, your neck over down to the left leg, over and down. So it's that lift of the side waist, really full stretch in the side body. Feel how gravity flows through the waistband. Really feel your head turn here. Your neck relax. Have you had a moment to notice feeling your hand holding your belt, pulling your foot? And it might be a bit of a kind of a toss up in the belly if you're feeling your connection in your waist, or if you feel some surplus in the tummy tissues. So when we do slide up to come out, feel that casual nature of taking the foot out of the belt and then crossing that left foot in front. And then we'll get busy putting our sand on the left thigh and then taking our blocks and going forward with our hands onto them, But you know, you might notice that this whole lower core was just kind of being wrenched over. So when I lean forward, I want to let the belly relax, kind of soften into the tummy. Feel the belly move with the breath. Feel that forward motion. You can always deepen the position by moving your hands lower or down to the floor. You know, but finding where there's a natural arch in the spine, which might be maintained by massaging through that spine by arching and rounding the back, small cat-cow motions. I like that experience of movement because you usually orchestrate that with a breath. You keep the rhythm of breath with the movement. Generally, you get a little more breathing focus when you have movement. It's like you have to tap into that. Or you stay in the shape and you kind of hold it sometimes. I never do that. Now blocks are going to go, I think this time we'll stay with them in the forward motion a little bit longer. Yeah, I kind of made that call in a direction that was not necessarily right. Well, this side it will be right. Okay. So when we take our sand off the left leg, we'll move the ball away, or you can keep it there and see how it works. Left leg is going to stretch back. Get any extra props away. Hopefully you won't get stuck around your belt like me. Okay. Half of the fun is getting lost with this. So we got a few things to get through in this short amount of time, but we have the right knee open. Now the ball might be good. It might be a horrible experience for you. So find where it works, lower down, forward bend. Elbows on blocks or floor. Floor would be nice if you can make it there, but if you can't get there, don't worry about it, okay? It feels like I'm compatible with the blocks for right now. And if you experience the sensation in the hip, you might as well stay with kind of arriving into the circulation sphere around the joint versus trying to kind of crush into it. Feel when you're just surrounding it and you're kind of starting to go into the experience of the fibers loosening up. You know, with that right foot either close to the bolster or it's a little bit forward of the bolster. That's where it's generally taught. Remember, hips don't have to be level on the pigeon forward bend. If it's not working for you with that direction with the foot, you can always pull it in closer to your bolster. You know, when we lean our body weight forwards, start to feel the body weight trickle back as if you're kind of bearing down a little bit versus leaning to the side quite yet. So you have a balance in the midsection. And then as your hands help you come up a bit, you're going to take the left leg and bring it out and circle around to come to your back. So let's take this. So we've got a belt, okay? We don't need the blocks. Those can go bye-bye for till the very last thing. Have your body, so when you lie back, your blanket is at the back of your mat, if at all. And then when you lie back, you're going to place your head to be supported on a blanket. And then have your belt, let it lay on your belly to start. And bring your feet up so you have this right angle between the back of the pelvis. You're really on the edge of the bolster. Tailbone is right at the edge, important. Kind of hold that for a moment so that you have the knees So they're now apart. So the feet are apart. That's reality. And then let the left foot lower down. Feel the right leg drawing in and keep the left bottom of the foot on the floor. Don't slide it out quite yet. And then hook your belt loop around your right foot and loosen it quite a bit so you have it to hang from your foot to your collarbones, right above really the sternum. Seems to be the spot. And then as I come into brain float, I'm going to first start with my sand on my left leg. And not required. You don't have to have any sand on your leg on this one if you don't like that. You can stay with your knee bent. Door 1 is knee bent, no sand. Door 2 is sand, straighten leg. I think there's about 2 on this pose. And then level out this position. You're going to place the belt to the occipital ridge. So you want to get a feel where the bump is at the back of your head. And then get a feel where it goes from the upper back, right? Into where the neck is really starting at C7. You want all that space where you can feel that base of the cervical vertebrae. You want to feel that that is floating up. So if I have my belt here, okay, wrapped around, and my head leans back. So I'm almost touching my blanket right now. Now you don't have to do that, but you might find keeping it simple is good. Especially for the nervous system right here. Swallowing, clearing the throat, feeling that light stimulation in the thyroid, the parathyroid, right? The hyoid right here between the parathyroids has a little bit of squeezing, right? So it's a little bit of a Jalandhara Bandha, chin lock is what it really is here. So spend the moment noticing the connectivity in your neck, and I know you'll feel your leg and your left leg, both legs have sensation. So adjust for a few more moments. Feel if your left heel is pressing away. Feel where the shoulder centers back, both of them open. Breathe slow. Soak it in. Now steady the focus into the support under your head. You might slide it off your head to switch the foot in the belt. You might keep it there and move your sand and then move your left foot up and hold the back of your head for security. And then when you change, you change sides, the left leg goes up, right leg goes down. And I start with the right leg going downwards and knee bending. So the foot is on the floor. And then start to get that bulk of my sand onto that leg and stretch it down. Okay, so feel where that line of awareness is as we thread through this final spinal. I know it's a little different of a exit strategy of a practice, but it'll come together. Hopefully. Okay. So feel where that patience is. This is a really pose that you have to produce a little bit of patience to be in, or you don't do it at all. But the benefit here for the thyroid, the endocrine glands, it's simply the stimulation and circulation there. It's just by the shape. Okay. So you would want caution on the pressure on the neck. So I want to feel like my head has enough, leverage to lie back into the belt. And of course, if you like the traction on the neck, you find the right amount, but feeling safe is important. So that left calf has some connectivity. Give it a few more moments. We're going to be moving the legs up after this, so you'll feel like it just keeps kind of threading together before you know it. You don't need a lot of leadership with it. It just kind of comes together naturally with the positions. You know, as you move the belt, and then you might want an extra few seconds on this one so we have purely even time on each side. But, you know, I feel a pretty deep pull in my left leg, like it's fairly significant. Even if my hamstring's fairly open, I feel like it's, you know, it's draining. It's really quite a drain in the lymph. So take the belt off your head. And then we'll take the belt off the foot today for time purposes. We could do lots of things with the belt, but we're going to work with that drain of the intensifying the flush of the lymph. So I put my sand on my feet. I lift up my sand in my feet or on my bottoms of my feet. And then I have this kind of prim and proper-ish. The legs are up and my tail is towards the edge. I can always get it a little closer to the edge, but you generally slide a little bit in the pose. Now, as my feet flex, naturally, I find what simply works out here. I'm going to encourage you to find something that you can have as an object between your hands. It could be a ball or a block, whatever you can find right now. You don't have to scramble. But hold that and bring it overhead. So ball or block overhead, not a belt, something that you push into, not that you pull apart. That's the key. Now you're pushing up a little bit with your feet. No matter what you think, you do have some energy of pushing. Just like you do when you stand on them, you're pushing, right? And when you're on the back with the legs up, there's a little pressure. So feel pressure into the hand, stretching the ball or block overhead. The block would be wide or mid-width. Okay, now try to get the legs to vertical. And then as we move the ball up or the block towards the ceiling, breathing. Okay. Depends on what you got. If you got a ball, use that. You're going to lower that to the belly. You're going to bend your knees and you're going to move that sand off. You might need to multitask here and put your ball right in your rib cage and get your sand off. Depends on how you like sand removal to go. Ball between the knees, and then knees are going to go side to side. Trying to get it all in. So when my knees go side to side, I'm really working on reaching over with my knees to stretch my side. Now I want you to keep this going at your own free will. So you can either keep on the bolster or knees to chest, and then push the bolster away, which is where we're going. And the knees go side to side, but without the bolster under your sacrum. So that's kind of a choice if it feels better here, to ease a little side to side. So coming to the final spinal, I'll give you a choice if you want to spend a little bit of time with this crossover for the hip, or if you want to spend more time with your legs up, okay? So if you're going to do the crossover pattern, you'll cross the right leg over the left, the knees will go to the left, and maybe a block or ball, but my feet are on my bolster, and I'm going to scoot a little bit back so I have a little bit more space for my joints. And you can add a sandbag to your outer leg or go free of that, which might feel kind of nice today, is to just kind of be free of that pressure right now. Feel what range you have in your low back and your ribs. Breathe. And those of you that are getting to legs up and want to prefer to go right into the full relax mode, that's good. We're getting a little bit of this in and maybe a tiny relax mode for some. For those that are over in the crossover, change sides, right leg down, left leg over right, knees to right, sand or no sand on that outer leg. You choose. If you're going to add your sand, keep in mind you want to layer it so it feels like it's consistent on each side and supportive. But no sand might be your program right now for the moment. Okay, and fine tune the ray of movement with the arm and the waistband. So the arm and waist are moving left and the knees are moving right. And we won't do any big moves with the blocks to get on top of the bolster on top right now. So you all don't spend your whole day here with me. Okay, so when you do take this final spinal motion, I want you to feel when the knees are clutched into the chest, and then we'll take about 45 seconds or so. Let the legs rest on the bolster with the knees over the bolster so that the knees are lifted up and supported, and feel the knees move a little bit apart. Avoid the Baddha Konasana right now. It's almost too much information in the nervous system. So let it be soothing. Add some sand maybe to low belly or no sand, you choose. And then spread the arms out to pentacle pose, right? So you have your arms open, your feet are open, and receiving and feeling that collective awareness among us in the group. Breathing this in as a final moment of awareness together throughout our homes, in our homes. And just feeling that appreciation of your practice in your body. Soak it in. Feel this evolution of breathing to bring yourself to balance. And if you want to stay in this shape a little bit longer, and some of you that want to come up and close practice sitting, that's fine. Either lying or sitting is perfect. So those that are going to come up for a moment, take the sand aside, bring your knees up, feet on bolster, and then roll yourself to the side. Hands are coming down to bring you up. And then take a seated second, crossing legs, spine up from the back of the pelvis, and feel that winding spine, feel the arch from the ribs to the chest, and then the hands meet, and let the mind bow into heart center. So thriving here in your heart center together, let's unite our breath, breathing in wellness, and exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Okay. All right. Thank you. Something about that just went on and on for me.